special surprise for you. I've arranged to have a chat with a prominent local attorney here. Her name is Miss Bellingan-Bennett, who's going to answer some frequently asked questions for you Westerners. Let's go meet Gracie. So nice to meet you, Gracie, and thank you so much for taking the time to give us some of your wisdom regarding the situation here in the Philippines. So, most of my viewers are Western men who need your services, so I'll post your contact info in the description.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, perfect. But before we get started, can you tell us a little about yourself and how long have you been an attorney here in Dumaguete area?
Okay, so I passed the bar in 2016. After that, I started working as a lawyer already in Dumaguete.
Oh.
I've been an associate in different law firms with Atty. And before I finally decided to have my own law firm with my friends.
Oh, that is perfect.
And in 2018, I got married with a Westerner.
There you have it, guys. She is married to a foreigner too.
Yeah.
So seems like there's a lot of that going around, right, here in Dumaguete?
Yeah, it's quite common now in Dumaguete.
Okay, well, so do you get a lot of expats needing legal advice, like regarding property ownership or marriage, stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of expats, or even the Westerners that my partner knows is seeking my legal advice on marriages, on ownership of properties, and other matters relative to their staying in the Philippines.
Yeah, that's very good. Well, you get a lot of questions for viewers. Actually, I get a lot of questions from the viewers asking about the process of marriage here in the Philippines. Can you explain to the viewers the difference in Western divorce and in annulments here in the Philippines?
Well, one basic difference of Western divorce and annulment in the Philippines is the tedious process.
The tedious process.
You're aware of that? Yeah. Tedious process of seeking annulment on their marriage. And of course, the grounds for which the annulment would be based, because in Western divorce, we have this no-fault divorce, right? So it could be anything under the sun as long as you don't want each other's company already. But in the Philippines, under annulment, we have two. We have nullity of marriage and annulment of marriage, which is based on different grounds. The grounds are quite specific, and it's very difficult to prove that in court, especially if it's going to be ground for psychological incapacity of one partner. Here in Dumaguete, I've not known anyone granted annulment based on that ground.
Oh my God!
But for grounds like bigamy, incestuous marriages, that's quite easy to be granted annulment on their marriage.
Wow. Wow, none here was granted?
Yeah, because it seems like our family courts here are so family oriented. So that's why it's very difficult for them to grant annulment based on psychological incapacity.
Psychological, but what about the nullify? If they haven't consummated the marriage, what are the grounds about in that area?
That would actually fall under psychological incapacity. If one partner or one spouse cannot fulfill his or her legal obligation,
so it is
the wife or husband, psychological incapacity. But again, you have to prove a lot of things, like you have to secure a psychiatrist, you have to have a findings that one spouse is indeed incapacitated to perform his or her duty as a husband or wife.
Wow. So how much an annulment costs and how long it can take?
Okay, so it really depends. Usually, minimum probably 200,000. That's the minimum. It really depends on the circumstances of the marriage. Or
200,000 is around like $4,000 maybe?
Yeah, around that much.
Okay. That's the minimum, but it can go as high as how much?
Yeah, depending on the duration of that proceedings, because proceedings here can go up to 3-5 years, or
3 or 5 years. Oh,
yeah, unfortunately. But hopefully with our new rules, which was promulgated or enacted in May 2020, just this last month, proceedings are made more efficient.
But but as you said earlier, it's not an assurance that they can get that, right?
No.
Regardless If even they spent that much money already?
Yes, especially if they filed it in Dumaguete.
Oh my god, so not in Dumaguete.
Yeah. That's what we suggest to our clients.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was really refreshing to know. I mean, I never really thought it's gonna take like 5 years. Oh boy. Well, when a couple decide to separate, is it true that they often don't get an annulment because of the cost of, cost involved? They just split?
Yeah, especially for Filipino couples, right? Like, they just have this informal agreement just to have their own ways. Like, no need to do the legal processes.
But what about if someone is being vindictive? So how long is it supposed to be like, it is okay that they're separated? Do they have to make an agreement, like it's signed, or it should be verbal only, or what?
Actually, any agreement signed by the couples during the marriage is invalid, especially with respect to their property regimes. But with respect to support of their children, yeah, that would be valid. Or custody to your children, that would be valid.
Okay, but let's say they haven't seen each other for 5 years, and somehow one of them just found out that the girl is marrying a foreigner. Can they still do damage to their ex-wife, even though technically it's still their wife? Can they still sue her? Yes.
Yes.
Oh
yes.
my god. So wow.
Yeah, that can be a ground for adultery, which is a criminal offense.
Criminal offense, but let's say 7-10 years, no communication. Is it,
Regardless of the duration of your informal separation, if you do not have any annulment or declaration of nullity of your marriage, you're still legally tied to be husband and wife. And with that, you cannot just be in a relationship with a different person.
Oh my god, that would be it's a sticky situation. So there you have it, guys. So watch out. A woman can say she is single, but sometimes she's still legally married. So Gracie, is it true that infidelity here can be punishable by jail time?
Definitely, yes, because it's a criminal offense.
Oh.
If it falls under 2 crimes, either adultery or concubinage. Adultery is committed by a married woman, while concubinage is committed by a married man. And both the partners of the married woman or married man can also commit the same crime.
Oh, wow. Even though, let's say, the guy doesn't know that this woman that he's dating is still married, he can really get into trouble?
Actually, with no knowledge of the marital status of the woman is a defense, a legal defense. But of course, you have to present that in court that you didn't have any knowledge about the marital status of that woman being married to someone.
He has to prove it. It's still gonna be a sticky situation either way. Okay, well, wow. Well, our prenups here are more enforceable than ones in the West, where a judge can overturn an agreement. So here in the Philippines, it's being honored in our court.
So contracts here are respected by the judge as being the agreement of the parties. So as long as the prenup agreement is executed according to the law of the Philippines and the formalities of which is in accordance or in compliance with our legalities here, then it becomes enforceable.
Okay.
Very enforceable.
But before they make a prenup something, they cannot just ask for the other party not having anything. So you guys what's the fair prenup usually, like the format here in the Philippines? I know in the West that they have an X amount of time being married to someone and they are entitled to a certain percentage. But how about here? Can a person or can a guy say, okay, if in the prenup, you cannot get anything or something like that in regards to his assets? Can he ask for that?
You can only subject in a prenuptial agreement the properties that you have right now
Okay.
or your future earnings. Let's say, can I take for example my case? Because of course I'm married to a Westerner and he asked me to have a prenup agreement, and I'm totally fine with it. So with our prenup agreement, it's complete separation of our property. So whatever he had during the time of our marriage, it's his, and whatever I have, it's mine. And during our marriage, I can share on what we have, but still, whatever we're going to attain or generate eventually with our own separate funds, then it becomes ours.
Oh,
Ours, or depending on our agreement on the acquisition of that property, but we can also agree that it's still our separate property.
wow. That's very good.
Yeah, actually, prenup agreement is like, it's making things fair to both parties.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's how I see a prenup agreement.
Well, there you have it, guys. So how do you think most Filipinos would react to foreigner asking for a prenup? Have you ever encountered people that...
Yeah, I did encounter a number of Filipinas already that I have to explain to them this prenup agreement, and because I'm not gonna say a specific case, but I have this previous client before. My client was actually the Westerner, and he asked me to explain to his girlfriend about why they should sign a prenup agreement. And I have to convince the girlfriend that it's not about trust, it's not about something that the Westerner is taking advantage, or the Westerner sees the Filipinas taking advantage to him, but it's fairness in a relationship.
Yeah.
This is fair. Anyway, you won't be looking always at a prenup agreement during your marriage, because you're just gonna be doing your role as a husband and wife. You won't be thinking about, he has more properties and I have to get it or something. No, that would not be the way of thinking once you're in a married relationship.
Yeah. Plus, there's nothing wrong with guys out there that wants to protect their assets, because in the West, it's really been unfair for them. They've been through all a costly divorce.
Yeah.
So
that's what I've heard also from Westerners who wanted to really have a prenup agreement, because most of these Westerners have been married before in the West, and during the time when they got their divorce, it was quite unfair to them, because at the end of the day, they sometimes get the least amount of money, and the woman who was just not in the house, but who had done her part as a mother or as a wife, but eventually, something went wrong in the relationship, got more of the assets sometimes, because she had the custody of the children, and
the custody of the children. And sometimes the stickiest situation as well is that most of the time they're the ones initiating the divorce.
Exactly.
Well, do you think it's a good idea for a foreigner to insist on having one here in the Philippines?
In my opinion, yes.
Perfect. Well, if there's no prenup, where are the general laws regarding property division? Do the courts favor a woman like they do in the West?
Without prenup agreement, the provision of law that applies is absolute community of property. Meaning, whatever the guy or the woman has before marriage, during marriage, will be their absolute community. They share 50-50.
Oh, okay.
50-50. So, with respect, eventually, if they get something goes wrong with their marriage and they seek for divorce or annulment, and their property regime has to be settled, so first they're gonna be settled as 50-50, and with respect to the support, then the judge gonna determine how much support should the one spouse give to the children if they have children, or to the other spouse who is not gainfully employed.
Oh, okay. Well, now regarding the children that you have mentioned it, if a foreigner gets a woman pregnant, what's his legal obligations?
Well, if that is his child, or that is the child born by the woman during their marriage, so he's gonna be obligated to provide support.
Okay, but what about they just met, they just started dating, and he made this woman pregnant? What would be his legal obligation to the woman?
If the woman goes to court, then the woman can ask for support for the child.
Okay, for like a child support. Well, can you tell us about claiming the child in the birth certificate? Well, and what it means? Because sometimes they were asking, do not sign the birth certificate if you're not sure that's yours.
Yeah, once you sign a birth certificate of the child, the presumption is that is your child, and you have to provide support to the child.
You're acknowledging that it's
acknowledging that that's your child.
Well, what if the guy is not sure it's his? Can he ask for a DNA testing before he signed the birth certificate?
He wouldn't have time.
He wouldn't have.
No, signing or registering the birth of the child happens in just a day or two
After the delivery.
Well, taking the DNA will take a long time.
Oh yeah, well, okay, like a scenario. Let's say he found out later on that it's not his child and he's already signed paper. What can he do?
Actually, he can go to court, dispute the filiation on the child. Yeah. And he has to present, of course, his evidence. One evidence would be the DNA of the child that's not his, and other circumstances that proves that he has no knowledge that the child is not his.
Wow, that is really something. Well, you've given our viewers a lot of things to think about, and I'm sure we could keep you here for hours, but I know how busy you are, and I'm going to thank you so much, Gracie, for your time and having me here.
It's my pleasure.
It's my pleasure too. Well, before we go, any last words of advice to the foreigners who might be thinking of loving or living here in the Philippines?
Well, it's more fun in the Philippines. I love living in the Philippines. So come in the Philippines. Come and live in the Philippines, especially Dumaguete. Valencia to have a beautiful place of abode. It's in Valencia because the weather is very good. It's not too hot, it's not too cold.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, that's a great advice, Gracie, and thanks again for chatting with us. Well,
you're welcome.
That's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this segment, and I'll be back this week with something new for you. Till then. So what did we learn today? Well, there is no divorce here, but there's a long and costly process of annulment. It can cost you tens of thousands of dollars and up to 5 years of your time, and you may still not be granted the annulment. In other words, choose carefully, guys. Many Filipinas that say they're separated are actually still legally married. And if you get involved with them and want to marry them, you're gonna end up paying for the expensive annulment. And if you knowingly have sex with a married or separated woman, you can actually go to prison for it here in the Philippines, especially if there's a jealous ex that wants to punish you. Watch out, guys. Prenup agreements are more airtight in this country, and the smart foreigner will insist on having one, even if he has to explain to his angry Filipina why it's necessary. If you don't have one, it's a 50-50 split of everything. And finally, if you get a woman pregnant here, you can either acknowledge that the child is yours and sign the birth certificate, or you can refuse to sign and the mother has to take you to court and prove your paternity before you'll be required to provide support, which is very minimal here compared to the West. I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, guys, but do the right thing, okay? Use birth control, because your Filipina probably isn't. Well, I wish I'd had longer to talk to Gracie, but I'm planning on doing a follow-up interview with her about property ownership and the correct way to make sure you guys don't get screwed. It's a long and involved subject that deserves its own video. Till then, see you next time, folks. Okay, well, that's a very good response. Well, so regarding about packages of the foreigners, would you agree that they are substantially larger than most Filipinos are accustomed to?
Well, that's general knowledge here.
That's general knowledge. Well, with you, in your legal opinion, do you believe that foreigners should be required to register them like a weapon with some sort of concealed carry permit like in the West before they just go walking around with them?
That's a very good idea. Yeah, I think in my legal opinion, they have to register that.
They have to.
They have to.
Yeah. You guys really have to.